So the view in front of us right now looks really weird because this is where Gotham City should be. Well, I know it is Gotham City. I guess it later became DC Universe, but right in front of us should be that large entryway to Gotham City, and it just looks really, really weird not having it here. The entire area looks really empty. Right now, this area is under construction. They're putting in the Wonder Woman roller coaster, and they've ripped out everything that was in Gotham City. They took out all of the buildings, and yeah, it just looks really weird. And of course, the main ride in here is Batman the Ride, which I believe will remain in this area. Hey, Green Lantern. Hey, how you doing? Anyways, Batman the Ride, I believe it will remain in this area. And that was always one of my favorite rides to go on. Of course, that's when I was able to do all of those loops. I can't do that anymore. But I just loved going on Batman. That feeling of your feet just kicking in the breeze. Such a great ride. And before Batman was in this area, this was home to Z-Force, which was a large rocket-shaped ride that just did a big loop. And that was here from, I believe, 1987 to the early 90s. But it's really kind of a bummer that they ripped up everything in Gotham City. I'm going to miss all of the buildings and Pizza Vector and the smaller rides that were here. Now, I'm going to see if I can look over the wall and kind of give us a glimpse of what's going... Oh, really tall wall. All right. Oh, wow. Yeah, they have ripped up everything. It's all gone. Man, what a bummer. And right across the way from Gotham City is Superman the Ride, or Superman the Escape. It's changed a few times. It's changed direction. And, oh, I just noticed they took off the giant Superman at the top. There was a huge Superman statue. I wonder when they got rid of that. And this was another one of my favorite places to come get my free employee meal. It's now a Johnny Rockets, but it used to be a place called Carousel Grill. And it was the only place in the park where you could get chili cheese fries and a Philly cheesesteak, and they were delicious. I mean, at least as far as theme park food goes. And you can see why it was called Carousel Grill, because the building looks like an old carousel, and that was part of the theming of this area by all of the Midway games, and I believe at the time this entire area was called Colossus County Fair. Now this really bums me out. Another classic ride that's recently been torn down. This is where Tidal Wave was. You can see right here, this was the entrance, and right up there was the sign, and just beyond that fence would have been Tidal Wave. And you know, I really enjoyed this ride, but to be honest, it wasn't doing too well at the end. It didn't get much of a crowd. I think people still really enjoyed going on the bridge at the exit. They would stand there and wait for the ride to come down the hill, and then they would get soaked. And you can see the ride itself and the bridge that I'm talking about during the opening credits of the TV show Step by Step. I came over here on the other side hoping that maybe the bridge was still here, but it's long gone. What a bummer. And again, that's to make way for the new Wonder Woman roller coaster, which you can see them building right here. Oh, and then over there, going down the first drop, is Riddlers Revenge, a stand-up roller coaster. And I worked here in the park when Riddlers Revenge opened. I came to the employee party, and I was one of the first people to ride Riddlers Revenge. And I used to ride this quite often. Really good ride. Quick story regarding that employee party. So at that party, they were handing out cardboard masks that went around your eyes. They looked like the Riddler's mask, and they were purple and green and had little question marks all over them. And I think probably most normal people just automatically put theirs in the trash. I not only wore mine at the party, but I kept it beyond the party, and I ended up bringing it with me to my senior prom. And I had it in the pocket of my tuxedo jacket, and we were waiting in line to get into prom, and my date noticed it in my pocket, and she pleaded with me not to wear it. I sadly agreed, but then once the music kicked in and we got out on the dance floor, I took out the mask and I put it on. I had my mohawk and this Riddler mask, and I was the life of the party, and my date was super bummed out. I thought I had some pictures of me with the mask and the tuxedo, but I wasn't able to find them. But that's the type of weirdo that I am. Okay, back to the video. And there was a newer roller coaster just beside Riddler's Revenge called Green Lantern, but it's already gone. Not sure what happened there. Another ride that was near where Riddler's Revenge now is Free Fall. And that's a ride that was here from the early 80s to the early 2000s. And the name pretty much says it all. It was a tower, and an elevator would take you to the top and then drop you, causing you to free fall. An extremely simple ride, but I really enjoyed it. And this is a brand new ride called Justice League Battle for Metropolis, and it's kind of like a Toy Story or Buzz Lightyear ride where you sit in a vehicle and there's a bunch of screens and you fire at stuff, and pretty fun ride. I've ridden it once. I used to like coming over here and getting pizza along with Pizza Vector in Gotham City. Now that's not what it was called back then, but I can't remember what it was called at the time. And there it is, Gold Rusher. Not only was this Magic Mountain's first roller coaster, it opened in 1971, but this is probably the first roller coaster that I ever went on, and sadly now it's probably the only roller coaster I can go on here, because now that I've gotten old, I can no longer handle all the loops. And just beside Gold Rusher on this hill, this used to be Spin Out, and it was one of those rides that went really fast in a circle and the floor would drop out and you would cling to the wall. And I have never been on this ride. I can't handle rides that spin, so I would have not been able to go on it. My wife told me that when she came here as a little girl, she made the mistake of going on this and then she had to go to first aid. And I remember watching this ride and talking to a guy that was waiting in line, and he was telling us that he was trying to beat his record and he was about to go on it for, I think, like the 30th time in a row. God, what a nut. Similar to Logjammer, but for some reason just not as cool. This is Jetstream, and it's another water ride that, well, like I said, was kind of like Logjammer, but I don't know why, I just never liked it as much. I do remember that I used to call this Band-Aid Falls because the water was so dirty and you would always see Band-Aids floating around in it. Probably my fondest memory of this ride is a story that my dad told me about him coming here in the 70s. And if you've never been on Jetstream, you stand on a rotating platform, and as the boat comes around, you step into it. That's what's going on right here in front of me. And as he was getting into the boat, he fell into the water. And oh wait, really quick, right over there, that's one of the newest roller coasters, West Coast Racers. Anyways, as he was getting into the boat, he fell into the water, and I don't know if he told me he was drunk or if I just assumed he was drunk, but anyways, yeah, I love that story. And directly across from Jetstream, this used to be a large theater, and this is where the Batman Stunt Show was. And I used to like coming to the Batman Stunt Show. I thought it was pretty good, at least as far as amusement park stunt shows go. But long before it was the Batman Stunt Show, they used to have a Police Academy Stunt Show here. And I'm sad to say that I never got to see it in person. I've watched some videos online, but it would have been amazing to see in person. This is the roller coaster that I just pointed out to you, and I believe it's one of the newest roller coasters here in the park, West Coast Racers. This is Apocalypse, and quite a few rides have been here on this piece of land where Apocalypse now sits. Back in the early 80s, this is where the bobsled ride was. And then in 1991, this became the home to Cyclone. And Cyclone is what I'm most familiar with in this area. It was really similar to Apocalypse, a large wooden roller coaster. And this entire area was called Cyclone Bay. And like I said, Cyclone is what I most remember this area for. It was a very large, very shaky roller coaster. And because it was so shaky and so rough, it wasn't very popular. And it was eventually torn down. The roller coaster that's here now was built. It originally opened as Terminator Salvation, and it was a Terminator themed roller coaster. And then for whatever reason, it was changed to Apocalypse, and it's been that ever since. And beyond Apocalypse, all the way over here in the far corner of the park, used to be a roller coaster called Deja Vu. It was a really crazy one. I never rode it. For whatever reason, they got rid of it, and now they just use this area for Fright Fest. Now, I just noticed behind me this Slingshot ride, and it looks like they might have left a couple of guests strapped into the seats, sitting out here baking in the hot sun. Oh my gosh! We're now at the top of the hill, looking up at the famous observation tower, and this area is Samurai Summit. At least I think it's still called Samurai Summit. And when I worked here for Fright Fest, this was my area. Well, actually, I worked in quite a few different areas over the years, but this was the area that I probably worked at the longest. A lot of fun running up and down this hill chasing people. Here's some behind the scenes footage that my wife took when we were dating. This is me in the makeup chair getting my makeup on. I'm glad she took this because this is actually the only footage I have of this. Now, this is us backstage getting ready. I'm strapping on my knee pads. That's my friend Joe. Strapping on my knee pads, getting ready to go out into the park. And we used to have a lot of crazy times out here on this hill. And right over here, I'll show you on the other side of that gate, that was our break room. That's where we would go to take our breaks. And I didn't really like taking a lot of breaks because I liked being out here scaring people. And then let me walk over here and I'll show you. This is where the haunted house was, or is. They still do the haunted house here. This is Willoughby's Haunted Mansion. Now, when I first began working up here, I was what they refer to as a slider. That's why you saw me strapping on those knee pads. I was the guy that would run up to you and slide and create sparks. Oh, I totally remember this. I chased this kid down the hill and then he ran into the line for Ninja. That's where he just went right now. He was trapped in the line for Ninja for like 45 minutes. So after being a slider, I was known as the chainsaw guy, and at the time, I was actually the only person allowed to have a chainsaw at Fright Fest. Guests referred to me as the chainsaw guy, even though that wasn't my character's actual name, but that's what they referred to me as. They would go up to supervisors and ask, when's the chainsaw guy coming out? And it's really cool that guests would come back time and time again just to see me do my thing. I remember I used to always chase people into this train station and trap them there, even though we weren't supposed to do that, but I did it anyways. Of course, the big ride up here is Ninja, which has been here since 1988. You can see right there, that's the train station that I chased that kid into. But anyways, Ninja, been here since the late 80s. I used to really enjoy this ride. Not so much anymore, but it is a good ride. I'm glad they still have it. And not a ton of people visit this area, but during Fright Fest, it actually gets really packed up here and they turn off all the lights. It's pitch black. There's a ton of fog and it's super crowded. So a lot of craziness up here. And I just remembered a story walking around up here. I just remembered something that happened right over here. So I was standing around with some of my coworkers right in this area and we got a small crowd around us. So of course, being the way that I am, I decided to entertain everybody and I jumped up on this wall. And keep in mind what I just said, pitch black, lots of fog, plus I was wearing contacts, and not the type that help you see, but theatrical contacts that actually impair your vision. So I jumped up on this wall and I instantly lost my footing and I fell straight down. And I remember as I started to fall, I thought, that's it, I'm dead. Luckily, if you look right here, it's only about a 4-foot drop, so I was fine. But if you look over here, it's like a cliff. It's a straight drop down to the lower part of the park. And I thought that's where I was. I thought I was falling all the way down to the lower part of the park. And I remember my coworkers that were standing here, including my cousin was one of them. They said that when I fell, I completely disappeared behind the wall and they thought that was it. They thought I was dead. So yeah, scary moment. Roaring Rapids is a classic water ride that's been here since the early 80s. I remember going on this in the dead of winter. I think it was actually New Year's Eve, and I got completely soaked, and I spent the rest of the night freezing and shivering and just wanting my dad to come pick me up and completely regretting my decision. And I also used to work in this area during Fright Fest. And I remember one night in particular, it started raining, but they kept us out here and they told us not to chase anybody because it was slippery. Now let me point out really quick, this is Katie's Kettle, another restaurant that's been here since way back in the day, and they filmed part of True Romance here. Anyways, they told us not to chase anybody because it was slippery from the rain. Of course, we didn't listen and people were slipping and falling left and right. And of course, you'll recognize this area from National Lampoon's Vacation, the Whippersnapper, but we'll talk about that later. We're going to save that for another video. They also used this area for True Romance. Now let's come down here so we can look up and get a shot of Viper. Viper is another classic Six Flags roller coaster. It's only been here since 1990, but it was really popular back in the day. And when I first started working here, I was pretty scared of Viper because it has I think 7 loops. And I was still pretty new to roller coasters, but I really wanted to go on it. So I was trying to work my way up to it. And I remember there was this period of time where I would get off work and I would just stare at Viper. And finally, one day after work, I just said, that's it, I'm doing it. And I went on it. And after that, it became one of my favorite roller coasters. I used to go on it all the time, but now there's no way in hell you could get me on it. And of course, the classic Revolution, been here since the mid-70s and one of the first roller coasters to have a loop. Now they tried changing this a couple of times. They added VR to it. You had to wear VR glasses, but they changed it back to the original, and I'm glad they did. Another thing that's changed here at Six Flags that I wanted to point out is back in the day, there was a little bit more effort on theming. And what I mean by that is each area used to have its own theme, and then the people that worked in that area, their uniforms reflected that theme. So for instance, the area that I worked in was called High Sierra Territory, and our uniforms were khaki pants and plaid shirts to kind of give an outdoorsy look. And then people that worked in Pirates Cove, they wore red and white striped shirts that kind of had a pirate theme. And people that worked in the parking lot, they had their own uniforms, and you know, so on and so on. But now everybody that works in the park just wears khaki pants and polo shirts, and I don't know, kind of boring. And one other thing that I forgot to mention is the old monorail. That's right, in case you didn't know, Magic Mountain used to have a monorail that went all around the park. It only had 3 stations, but it still came in handy if you were here all day and you were tired. And let's say you were maybe at the back of the park by Batman and you wanted to get to the front of the park. Well, there was a monorail station in Colossus County Fair, so you could go jump on that and then take it to the front of the park, and it would save you a lot of time and trouble going up and down the hills. Now, I believe the monorail closed in the early 2000s, but even after it closed, you could see the old stations and parts of the tracks throughout the park for many years. Now, most of that has been removed or demolished, but I think there's still a few parts of the track hidden in the park, and we'll try finding some of that in the next video. All right, so it's time for me to get out of here. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.